Hello, welcome to the PinkUn Matchday vlog. I'm from Southwell. We're back again 2 days after a rather interesting day at Villa Park that I think we'd all rather forget pretty quickly given how Norwich City lost that game. Obviously plenty of those players are full time on their knees. The body language wasn't great, so today they've got to pick themselves up and go again against Jose Mourinho's Tottenham side, which is going to be difficult given all the quality they possess in their ranks. Expecting Christian Eriksen to come back in the side today, and then Jose Mourinho might accidentally be forced into playing his best midfield, which is interesting given how many players he has out. So it's a big challenge for Norwich, big test. The thing is, you don't know which Norwich are going to turn up when you consider the fact they've got 4 points at Carrow Road against Arsenal and Manchester City and none against Sheffield United and Aston Villa. That really sums up where they are at the moment in terms of inconsistency, but nonetheless we'll go to Carrow Road. Norwich are in desperate need of points. The performances have been there in recent weeks, they've improved, they've looked good. Now it's just about converting them into points. Let's see if they can do it today. So Mr. Mourinho's in town with quite a few more people hovering around the main reception. About 2 hours to kick off or so, just under 2 hours. Quite a lot of people milling about. Poignant programme cover tonight, starring Martin Peters, of course, who sadly passed away last Saturday, formerly of Norwich, formerly of Tottenham Hotspur as well, and scored in the World Cup final that England won back in that famous year of '66. Definitely a legend of the game, definitely a legend of these parts, and he'll be remembered suitably for kick-off. A moment of applause, but yeah, very sad news that Martin Peters died. That came out following the Wolves game, but nice to see the club recognising all he did today. And on to the team news, well, there's some interesting stuff from both sides. 4 changes for both. Of course, Jamal Lewis comes back in for Sam Byron. Marco Steedman replaces Kane McLean. Onel Hernandez is in for Todd Cantwell. And one more as well missing. That's it, Mario Vrancic in for Tom Tribal. Tottenham 4 changes as well, although 2 of those were enforced with Winks and Sissoko missing through suspension. And it is as I expected. Lo Celso and Ndombele, who comes back into Jose Mourinho's thoughts, with Christian Eriksen back in as well. He is behind a front two-ish, a fluid front two of Ali and Kane. That's back 3 for Tottenham tonight. Alderweireld for Tongan and Foyth, the 3 central defenders. Ryan Sessegnon, of course, someone who shone at Fulham during their championship season, and then need to point to their bench again in terms of the quality. You just have to look at Lucas Moura as one, Eric Lamela as another, although it hasn't quite hit the heights many expected at Wolves. Eric Dyer as well, a seasoned England international. So those are the teams. Probably a lot to do with the fact both teams played 2 days ago. It feels like 10 minutes since the last game of football at Villa Park. But there we go, they are the teams for this evening's game. Half time here at Carrow Road. Once again we find ourselves talking about the wonderful VAR system. Norwich 1-0 ahead. Mario Vrancic with the goal, which seems to have been almost forgotten given what has transpired since. It's one of those offsides where the lines are being drawn from Timu Puki's armpit, and for me it's just not what VAR was brought in to rule on. We're talking about a system that was designed to eradicate the injustices that were defining games, and that for me is well, the Norwich fans summed it up, began chanting in masses that it's just not football anymore, and that's what it feels like. The angle's not great, we're sort of looking at it on the side, and Norwich should really be 2-0 up. I mean, it's a ludicrous decision. I've just got it on the screen to my left, and it's so marginal, it's untrue. We're talking pixels, but there you go, that's VAR for you, and Norwich City are only 1-0 up. Kevin Friend got a roundly boot, which I feel quite sorry for him given the decisions made at Stockley Park, but overall a very good Norwich City performance. Spurs have been quite lethargic, haven't really pressed them in key areas and allowed them to assert themselves quite well in possession. That's led to a number of passages, and they've had great joy down the sides of Spurs, obviously overloading the areas where they played with wing backs. But yeah, we should be talking about a 2-0 lead. Ultimately we're not. That's Premier League football, that's modern football, and I'm just beginning to wonder that if Filippo Inzaghi was playing under these current VAR interpretations, whether he'd have actually registered a career goal. I think not, but there we go. Big second half. This is the fourth game in a row that Norwich have taken the lead at Carrow Road, and of course they've only come out of that run with 1 point, so it's going to be big. We're going to expect a response from Spurs. I probably anticipate them attempting to be a bit more dominant in their play and looking to harass Norwich a bit more in key situations. So there we go. We shall see what transpires. Hopefully no more VAR for the sake of everyone in the stadium, because it got quite heated and quite angry, and you have to say rightly so.
What can I say? We've been mugged off there. To think that is deemed a clear and obvious error is beyond me. I wasn't at the ground today. Watched the game on Sky, and yeah, it's silly, isn't it? It's just getting ridiculous now. 1 millimetre is clear and obvious apparently, and you know, it's cost us 3 points. It's a very good point for Norwich today, a very good point for Norwich City, a point towards survival. Do I think we deserve 3 points? No. If you take away the Pukki offside goal, I don't think we did enough to really merit to win the game. But we did well defensively. We did well. It's a shame about the penalty. Zimmerman, it's a rash bit of defending, and he's dived in. Kane's one of the best strikers in the world. He knows what he's doing. He anticipates it. He throws himself to the ground. He wins the penalty. It was always going to be. But yeah, I think the VAR decision sums up Norwich's season really so far. It's not the first time it's happened to us. It's well, what can you say? We have to look forwards. Like we say, it's a point towards survival. It's another point to keep us in this league. As you can tell, I'm a bit deflated by it, and it is disappointing. But at the same time, we have to think it's not a defeat. We've finished 2019 where it hasn't been a defeat. We've drawn against a very good Spurs side with a very, very good manager and very good players. Eriksen free kick was phenomenal. You know, you can't take anything away from that. And we did well. We held our ground. We did well to keep ourselves in the game. We did well to lead twice. Vrancic was brilliant. Jamal Lewis was brilliant in his first game back in. Pukki was good. Hernandez was all right. You know, we're doing well. And like we say, it's onwards from here. VAR's mugged us off. Should be 3. We'd come away with 1. But there we go. That's life in the Premier League for you. Here is to Palace. And hopefully we'll get a winning start to 2020.
Hi there, my name is Callum Howard, and Connor has very kindly asked me to say a couple of words on tonight's pretty impressive outing at Carrow Road against Tottenham Hotspur. Now, I'd like to keep things as positive as possible because I thought today was a really, really good performance against a very tough, world-class, arguably side, a side that was in the Champions League final last year. A standout performer for us tonight, underscored by his goal and his beautiful penetrating passes through the defence, unlocking our attacking force with Mario Vrancic. I really think him partnered with Buendia is giving us another dynamic to our attacking force that we were kind of missing in the early stage of the season. I feel like getting those balls through and cutting defences in half, releasing the pressure and the press on us and allowing Pukki to do what he does is what's going to be a saving grace for us this season. And I do say saving grace with some level of optimism. I think today was a brilliant foundation to build on. I think if we carry on these performances and that hunger and the desire to keep going and to keep fighting and not letting our heads drop when we're equalised or a VAR decision goes against us, something that we did so well in the Championship but we just seemed to lose in the early part of this season. And I think that optimism came from the top. I think that came from the management. Daniel's proactive approach to this game was brilliant. Bringing on Cantwell in the 65th, 70th minute showed a real positive intent to go at Tottenham. And I take my hat off to him because we've given him some stick in the past couple of weeks for leaving his changes way too late and not being able to make an impact on the game. I think O'Neill against Villa got one touch once he came on. Onel Hernandez is an interesting point for me. I think he had some very good moments trying to cut in on his right and sort of almost do a Grealish and put a curving ball into the top right-hand corner. But his product just isn't quite there. And I think trying to get him to do that, if that's what he's being set out on the pitch to do, I think maybe that's a waste of his talent. I think where he works better and where we've seen him work better is when he cuts through the pressure down the left, very much like what Aaron's did today, which I was very impressed with. Then bringing balls inside for McLean, Pukki, Cantwell to get on the end of and score some nice close range goals on the break. That's where I think, combined with our long penetrating balls through the defences from midfield, that's where our chances are going to come from this season. I do think I have to touch on VAR at the end here. I don't want to leave it on a sour note, but I've got to be honest, I feel sorry for the referees because they're coming out here doing a job that they've been trained for, that they practice for, that they have to go through a high level qualification to work in the Premier League, and then they're coming in and they're having their peers constantly watching over their shoulder and sometimes taking their decisions away, and it's just not feel organic for the referees to be able to do their jobs. And I can't imagine what it's like feeling that every time you make a decision you're just waiting for it to be overruled. Today we had this case of Pukki's bandaged toe being offside in the build-up or something ridiculous like that, but we've seen it consistently throughout this season. Raheem Sterling jumps to mind on numerous occasions, and I just think I don't want to say that VAR should go because I don't think it's that much of a drastic measure, but work needs to be done. There is a little conspiracy theory, and Daniel touched on it in his post-match conference, which I liked, was that our referee for the Aston Villa game, who gave the wrong throw-in that led to the Aston Villa goal, was actually our VAR referee tonight. I don't think there's anything in that, but it's nice to have a little theory that there's somebody working on the inside against us, and it certainly feels like it has been that way so far this season. So thank you very much for listening to my thoughts. Thank you very much, Connor, for having me on. I look forward to working with you all again, and have a very happy new year.
Good evening. You joined me stood in the Snake Pit following that, I think we used the word dramatic, 2-2 draw with Tottenham Hotspur here at Carrow Road, and we've got to start really, haven't we, at the only place we can start, and that is discussing VAR, and it seems to crop up pretty much every week now, and it's a subject that I think the majority of football fans are probably a bit sick and tired of hearing, but ultimately it's involvement in games and the way that it's being rolled out in English football is making it a talking point, and that's why people like me are stood here talking about it. That's why players are are asked about it. That's why managers are quizzed on it. Because ultimately what we've seen today is VAR used in a way that's going to antagonise supporters and is going to antagonise people involved in the game, because when you've got an offside decision, and I've seen it 4 or 5 times now, the still image that they drew lines upon, I'm still not sure whether or not he was offside. And if we're looking at using the armpit, which of course is the new offside rule of the point of where they judge offside to be, for me that's fairly ludicrous, given that I'm not quite sure what advantage you gain through your armpit. And it's not as if Timu Pukki is leaning his body into the space either. He's literally just stood, and if you look at his 2 standing feet there firmly behind the defender, and we're talking pixels. And when we come to understand why people are getting frustrated with VAR, it's not because it's going against their team, because if this had have gone in Tottenham's favour today, or rather in Norwich City's favour, I think we'd still be talking about it with the dejection that we are at the moment, because the way it is being rolled out is having an effect on football. And when you've got supporters coming to watch football, and Chris Wilder put it quite pertinently earlier on in the season, and you don't know what to expect and you don't understand what is going on, it's like a completely different game. And these Norwich fans inside this ground started chanting, again, it's just not football anymore. And it's quite striking really for a group of fans, and they had banners out in the Barclay to illustrate that point further. And for me, decisions like that today was not what VAR was brought in to rule on. And what it was done, it was just by design meant to eradicate the injustices within the game that from which a game was decided upon. I'm talking like someone scoring with a handball that the referee doesn't see, or a foul in the build-up, or a clear penalty that isn't given. Not an offside where we have to sit idle for 3 minutes and we have to draw lines and compare. And for me, that's not offside. And we venture into the water of clear and obvious. And for the referees, they deem that to be clear and obvious, the fact you're either onside or you're not. But for me, what they need to do there is draw the lines on, get the referee to say to the referee, look, we've done this, we've made this, we've come to this, we've drawn the lines, you've got a still image, go over to the monitor, have a look, make your decision. And if the referee can't see whether or not he's offside, then stick with the on-field decision. And that eradicates and removes all the angst surrounding it. And it's not going to go away, it's not going to be scrapped, but what they do need to do is change it radically. And because at the moment it's turning people away from football. And I said in the press box to my colleagues that it's perhaps the greatest advert for non-league football that they could ever want, because what it is doing is alienating supporters. And it's like a 1980s computer game, isn't it, when these lines get drawn on. And look, I'm a supporter of VAR. I think it will benefit the game eventually when they roll it out to a degree that is not farcical. But I am getting increasingly frustrated with it. I'm getting frustrated with the fact it's dominating the game. I'm frustrated with the fact that it completely altered the dynamic of the game here this afternoon. And I'm frustrated with the way it's being used, because the reason I fell in love with football is because it was so instantaneous. There were the highs, there were the lows, there were the moments that would get you off your seat, there were the moments where you'd despair, there were the moments that excited you. And VAR is taking that away from people. You're scoring a goal and suddenly you have to wait 2 minutes to see whether or not your celebration was in vain. And to me, that's not right, that's not football. And I think to those who say, well, it works in other sports and it works in rugby and cricket, well, yeah, it does. But they're sports which within them have enforced breaks and are a slower pace altogether. Anyway, that's my little rant on VAR done 5 minutes into this video. Let's talk about the football now. Norwich City were very good today. They were very good. Another performance where, okay, they've managed to take some points from it, but probably not the points that they would have wanted, particularly given the nature of their first half performance. I think Spurs, and in particular the way Jose Mourinho altered their formation and altered their approach to the game, really got them back into it. But yeah, Norwich really exploited Spurs in that 3-5-2. I felt what Spurs were essentially attempting to do was try and counteract Norwich's high fullbacks. And what Norwich did really well was kept Hernandez really, really wide, and also Max Aarons on this right-hand side. And with smart interplays and smart bits of combination play, they get in and work that space, and that really created space in the middle for them as well by doing that, because that's how they pulled defenders wide and almost dismantled that three at the back that Spurs had in Vertonghen, Alderweireld and Foyth in the first half. And that's why they had so much joy, and that's why when Buendia won the ball high up in the pitch and Mario Vancic carried it, that's why he had so much space to drive into, because Norwich overloaded the right areas in that midfield and worked really hard to make sure they got the tactical aspect of it right. And that showed, because Spurs were lethargic. I didn't think they really came up with an answer to Norwich in the first half, and Norwich, as we said for the first 5 minutes of this video, should have been 2-0 up and would have been deserving and would have deserved that. And had they been 2-0 up at half time, then I think the game and the dynamic of it changes, and we probably stood here in the aftermath of the game talking about a Norwich City win, and what a pivotal win it would have been. But Lady Luck doesn't seem to be shining down on Norwich City at the moment. That second half didn't really feel like Norwich did too much wrong, to be completely honest. Obviously fatigue comes into it. This is their second game in the space of 3 days, and that's not an excuse, but it's a fact. It's a scientific fact. But Spurs dealt with it better. I think what Mourinho realised pretty quickly, at half time really, with the changes he made, brought on Lucas Moura, switched to a back four, and brought on a few more technical players that would engage in a bit more of a football match than what Spurs perhaps anticipated it being, coming to a team who were bottom of the league. Norwich played football and played good football against them as well. Some really, really nice passages of play. There was a passage in particular in the first half where Vrancic threaded it through to Hernandez, and unfortunately his shot was wild and went wide, but if it has more control and he puts it in the bottom corner, it's certainly up there with the one we saw Southampton score the other day through Nathan Redmond. It was a very good passage. But yeah, kudos to Mourinho. I think his tactical alterations really helped them out. I think it gave them a bit more, gave them a few more bodies in midfield to play with, because the wide players were tucking in when they had the ball, and when you've got Lucas Moura and Christian Eriksen on either wing, they're always going to come quite central and look to influence the play, and that's exactly what they did. Christian Eriksen scored a wonderful free kick, and again we can talk about the ramifications of whether Harry Kane was offside or not. I've not seen it back yet, so I don't know. But Jamal Lewis handball. Norwich then obviously score a very fortuitous goal down this end. Goal down this end. Sergio Aurier bounced off him after Pukki's poor touch, and it just felt like from that point Norwich were holding on a little bit too much too soon. And on the 78th minute they were pretty much camped in their own 18-yard box, which is to be expected because of the context I've just given in terms of fatigue, the quality of operators that Spurs had at their disposal on the pitch. But equally, the way they were playing and their game plan at that point, they wanted to try and hit them on the break. That's the reason Hernandez stayed on for as long as he did. And yeah, ultimately a sucker punch. Tribal gets caught in possession. Tottenham break. They flood bodies forward in the transition, and I thought second half they were probably better in the transition than Norwich. Certainly in terms of on the break, Ali and Kane are devastating. I think when they make their runs in behind, which is what they were looking for in the first half, but didn't quite pay off in the way that Mourinho anticipated. And from there, they found their equaliser. I think based on the second half, a draw may be a fair reflection, but Norwich were definitely the side who edged it, I thought, for lengthy periods. And once again, we're still talking about Norwich City dominating a game for periods and ultimately not finding 3 points. But on the flip side of that, and I'm stood here now thinking off the top of my head, that's Manchester City, Arsenal and Tottenham that they've got 5 points out of at Carrow Road. Aston Villa, Sheffield United and Watford, 0. And that there is the issue for Norwich City. Had they have turned a couple more of those games against teams in and around them into draws, even into wins, then they would find themselves in a completely different situation to where they are currently. But alas, that's not the case. Equally, if they can win here against Crystal Palace on New Year's Day, with the potential to close the gap, then we could be again talking about some sort of revival mission. But who knows, that's in the future, and Norwich City now need to recover from this, pick the bones out of it. No doubt there'll be quite a lot of VAR chat in the subsequent follow-up from this game. But there you go. There are my thoughts on Norwich City's 2-2 draw with Tottenham today. Dramatic. I think I've just about caught my breath. Fair to say VAR stole the show, I think, in the end. And how often are we saying that this season?